Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Jimin Janna.
And I'm Hem Khorsaro, and on the show today, as per Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Russia has proposed holding the next round of direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on the 2nd of June. This with the aim of achieving sustainable peace settlement. Will the peace talks yield a lasting and just peace this time around? Remains to be seen.
Also on the show, Elon Musk has now finally announced that his time as a special government employee in the Donald Trump administration has come to an end. The partnership of Elon Musk and President Donald Trump has been central to the White House operation since the administration took office in January earlier this year. We'll bring you the latest on that front. Let's start with the headlines. This is World DNA.
Thousands of Palestinians break into a United Nations warehouse in Gaza in an attempt to find food. World Food Programme says at least 2 people have died.
Ukraine says it is ready for more direct talks with Russia, but wants Moscow to provide its peace terms in advance. This as Moscow has proposed direct talks in Istanbul in the coming Monday.
The federal court has ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by imposing sweeping tariffs without congressional approval. The decision, which invalidates the tariffs and blocks the enforcement, sparked a market rally and sets the stage for a major legal showdown.
Elon Musk says he is leaving his position within the US government with his time as special government employee coming to an end. The tech billionaire led Trump administration's effort to slash federal spending.
Massive glacier collapses in the Swiss Alps, largely destroying the village. Authorities say 1 person missing.
Operation Shield, a civil defense exercise planned for today in states and union territories adjoining India's western border, been postponed.
Top seed Aryna Sabalenka continues a strong start to the French Open. The 3-time Grand Slam cruises past Jill Tikaman to reach the 3rd round. Now, thousands of Palestinians broke into a UN warehouse in Gaza's Deir al-Balah.
And this as aid trickles into the Palestinian enclave on the brink of famine. And the United States readies new terms for a possible truce between Israel and Hamas.
Now, the footage showed crowds of Palestinians breaking into the World Food Programme warehouse, taking bags and cartons of food supplies as gunshots rang out. The UN's World Food Programme said 2 people may have died in the incident. Israel, under growing international pressure, ended an 11-week-long aid blockade on Gaza 10 days ago. It has allowed a limited amount of relief to be delivered via 2 avenues, the United Nations or US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
The UN on Wednesday condemned the US-backed aid system in Gaza. Listen to this.
On May 18th, the United Nations was informed by the Israeli authorities of the approval for the resumption of limited aid entry into Gaza. Since then, very limited numbers of goods have entered and have been distributed by the United Nations and its partners. But this is comparable to a lifeboat after the ship has sunk.
However, Israel accused the United Nations of seeking to block Gaza aid distribution.
The UN must stop spreading panic and start moving aid. Put your ego aside, pick up the aid, and do your job.
On the other hand, Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, delivered an emotional address to the UN Security Council, breaking down in tears as he described the suffering of Palestinian children amid the war in Gaza.
And around 4,000. It's unbearable. How could anyone tolerate this horror? Excuse me, Mr. President. I have grandchildren. I know what they mean to their families. And to see this situation of the Palestinians without us having hearts to do something is beyond the ability of any normal human being to tolerate.
In Washington, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff expressed optimism about a possible ceasefire, saying he expected to propose a plan soon.
I think that we are on the precipice of sending out a new term sheet that hopefully will be delivered later on today. The President is going to review it, and I have some very good feelings about getting to a long-term resolution, temporary ceasefire, and a long-term resolution, a peaceful resolution of that conflict.
However, Gazans remained pessimistic, saying 600 days have passed since the beginning of the war. Nothing has changed.
We've lived 600 days of war, famine and displacement. Our homes have been bombed. We don't know where to go and there is no place to shelter in. Where do we go? The streets and schools are all full of tents and the houses are all destroyed. There is no place for people to take shelter in. There is no food, no water, not even clothes.
In Israel's Tel Aviv, thousands gathered to support hostages still held in Gaza on the 600th day of war, urging a ceasefire to secure their release.
We need that push from you guys. We need it from President Trump. We need it from Witkoff. We need it from you. We need a deal that would lead the deal to release the last hostage, the last one of the 58 hostages that are now in captivity, and praying that we will not stand here again for the 700th day, but we will have the last hostage coming out.
Out of 251 hostages seized during the Hamas attack, 57 remain in Gaza, including 34, which the Israeli military says are dead. Hamas also holds the body of a soldier taken captive in a 2014 war. And for more on this, a correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from the UN headquarters in New York. Listen to this.
The United Nations Security Council convened to address the escalating humanitarian crisis in Gaza on Wednesday. Acting UN Special Coordinator described the situation as a, quote, lifeboat after the ship has sunk, highlighting the dire conditions for Palestinians. America trauma surgeon Dr. Fayrouz Sidwa provided a harrowing account of Gaza's collapsing healthcare system, detailing surgeries performed without anesthesia and children dying from preventable causes due to a blockade of medical supplies. The United States, for its part, has announced a plan to propose a new ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, aiming to at least temporarily have some kind of truce leading to substantive negotiations. Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, accused the United Nations itself of hindering aid distribution, claiming that over 400 trucks were waiting at the border due to UN inaction. As the death toll in Gaza surpasses 54,000, the international community continues to grapple with the urgent need for a resolution to the conflict and the alleviation of civilian suffering. Sadly, however, to no avail, at least for now. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
And over to the Russia-Ukraine updates. Russia has said that it wants new talks with Ukraine in Istanbul next Monday.
This is to present its plan for peace settlement, but Kyiv says that it needs to see the proposal in advance for the meeting to yield results.
Now, diplomatic efforts to end the three-year conflict have accelerated in recent months, but Moscow has repeatedly rejected calls for an unconditional ceasefire and shown no signs of scaling back its demands. The two sides previously met in Istanbul on the 16th of May, which marked their first direct talks in over 3 years. Russia had also proposed a three-day ceasefire, which was rejected by Ukraine. Now, the encounter failed to yield a breakthrough. Ukraine says it has already submitted its peace terms to Russia and demanded Moscow does the same. Rustem Umerov, who negotiated for Kiev during the last talks, in a post on social media highlighted that the Russian side has at least 4 more days before their departure to provide the memorandum for review.
However, Russia says it would present the documents straight at the talks and that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has briefed his U.S. counterpart on the proposal. According to the State Department, Rubio called for Moscow to engage in good faith talks with Ukraine. Rubio reiterated U.S. President Donald Trump's calls for constructive, good faith dialogue with Ukraine as the only path to ending this war.
This as the two sides continue to trade waves of massive aerial strikes. Ukraine unleashed one of its largest ever drone barrages on Russia yesterday, while Moscow pounded Kiev with deadly strikes over the weekend. Trump, who has been pushing for a peace deal, said he was very disappointed at Russia's deadly bombardment during the negotiating process, but rebuffed calls to impose more sanctions on Moscow.
Only the fact that if I think I'm close to getting a deal, I don't want to screw it up by doing that. Let me tell you, I'm a lot tougher than the people you're talking about, but you have to know when to use that. If I think it's going to hurt a deal, this isn't my war. This is Biden's war, Zelensky's war, and Putin's war. This isn't Trump's war.
Elon Musk has announced that his time as a special government employee in the Donald Trump administration is coming to an end.
Musk's announcement may signal the end of the relationship that has defined the second Trump administration, at least so far. Musk was designated as a special government employee, which allows him to work for a government job for 130 days each year, measured from Trump's inauguration on the 20th of January. He would hit that limit towards the end of May.
In a post on X, the world's richest man said that he was grateful and thanked President Donald Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. He went on to say that the Doge mission will only strengthen over time.
Trump tasked Musk with cutting government spending, but after a feverish start, Musk announced in late April that he was mostly stepping back to run his own companies again. Since then, Musk has also increasingly criticized Trump's policies. He has recently criticized Donald Trump's signature spending bill. The Tesla and SpaceX owner said that Trump's bill would increase the deficit and undermine the work of the Department of Government Efficiency, that is DOGE.
Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which passed the U.S. House last week and now moves to the Senate, offers sprawling tax relief and spending cuts and is the centerpiece of his domestic agenda. The tycoon last week also said that he would pull back from spending his fortune on politics, having spent around $250 million to support Trump.
In terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Musk has previously admitted that he did not achieve all his goals with DOGE. Even though tens of thousands of people were removed from government payrolls and several departments were gutted or they were shut down, Musk's own businesses suffered majorly in this time.
Protesters against the cost-cutting targeted Tesla dealerships, while arsonists even torched a few of the electric vehicles, and the firm's profits slumped. Musk has also been focusing on SpaceX after a series of fiery setbacks to his dreams of colonizing Mars, the latest of which came on Tuesday when its prototype Starship exploded over the Indian Ocean.
Differences as well as day of launch wins.
Mexico is preparing for its first ever judicial election after ex-president Andrés Manuel López Obrador introduced and approved a reform.
This changed the way judges are appointed in the country. The election on the 1st of June will look and elect all of Mexico's judges by popular vote. This as opposed to the decades-old system of judicial appointments being made on grounds of merit.
The reform last year triggered widespread protests across Mexico. Thousands opposed the amendment and critics slammed the ex-president for politicizing the judiciary. But as the country now prepares for the first of its kind judicial election, many families are telling stories of how the justice system has failed them in the past.
And how they are hoping that the new system brings about change, increases accountability of the judges. Listen into these personal accounts.
Pues hemos confiado en las autoridades.
We have trusted the authorities, but up to this moment, we believe they have omitted many things and have not done their job properly. I believe that people have not had the justice they need for many years.
I'm very concerned about the judicial branch because there are people who are deprived of their freedom, and we don't know how much longer they'll be there. We don't know how it's going to be structured, how it's going to function. That's my personal fear. What will happen to those who are in prison?
For us, there's still no justice because of the corruption of the judges. Sometimes we're just about to learn something, and then something comes up, they get released, and that's it. For us, it is very, very difficult to understand why the judges act that way. They get the prisoners and let them go, even if they're guilty.
Now, more than 3 years after a family of 4 from India froze to death near the US-Canada border in a desperate attempt to reach American soil, 2 men involved in the human smuggling operation have been sentenced now.
On the 19th of January 2022, Canadian authorities discovered the frozen bodies of Jagdish Patel, his wife Vaishali Ben, and their 2 children, just meters from the US border near Manitoba. The family from Gujarat's Dingucha succumbed to extreme cold during a blizzard, a minus 36-degree wind chill, sealing their tragic fate.
The man accused of masterminding their journey, Harsh Kumar Ramanlal Patel, also from Gujarat, was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison in Minnesota. Prosecutors called him the ringleader of a smuggling network moving Indian nationals through Canada and into the US. Also sentenced is 49-year-old Steve Anthony Shan, the US driver who was supposed to pick up the group. He received 6.5 years behind bars and 2 years of supervised release.
Indian nationals were not dressed appropriately, were ill prepared for the weather they faced that night. They walked hours trying to find the defendant, Steve Shand, in a smuggling operation that was put in motion by defendant Patel.
Prosecutors painted a harrowing picture of the family's final moments. Jagdish Patel reportedly tried to shield his son's face from the bitter wind with a frozen glove, while his wife collapsed against a fence, possibly believing safety was just steps away.
These defendants knew it was cold, In fact, they knew it was life-threateningly cold, but they didn't care. What they cared about was money, and their callous indifference to the value of human life cost a family of 4 their lives.
Now, Harsh Kumar Patel's legal team has filed to appeal his conviction and sentence, requesting a government-paid attorney due to lack of funds. And a village in Switzerland was destroyed after a huge chunk of a glacier in the Swiss Alps broke off.
A deluge of ice, mud and rock mostly buried at the Blatten village that had been evacuated due to the risk of a rock slide. Now, officials said that one person is currently missing. A video showed the dramatic moment when the glacier partially collapsed, creating a huge cloud that covered part of the mountain as rock and debris came cascading down. An official told Swiss media that about 90% of the village was covered by the landslide. Officials said millions of cubic meters of rock and soil have tumbled down since Blatten was first evacuated this month, when part of the mountain behind the glacier began to crumble, sparking warnings it could bring the ice mass down with it.
Blatten's roughly 300 inhabitants were evacuated on the 19th of May after geologists identified the risk of an imminent avalanche of rock and ice from above, were battered by the rock slide. In what is being deemed as France's largest child sexual abuse case, a French court has jailed the 74-year-old pedophile surgeon guilty of sexually abusing over 299 children for 3 decades under the effects of anesthesia. This trial is now being regarded as one of the worst instances of prolonged sexual abuse in France's modern history, after the case of 72-year-old Giselle Pellicourt. During his trial that lasted over the course of 3 months, 74-year-old surgeon Joël, who is a father of 3, admitted to sexually abusing 299 patients for over 25 years in hospitals of Western France where he'd worked. He was awarded the longest possible sentence of 20 years, has been admitted that 256 of the 299 victims were under the age of 15 at the time of the assaults. The real extent of his abuse only came to light after his arrest in 2017 on suspicion of sexually assaulting his 6-year-old neighbor. The crimes date back to 1989, continued till 2014. Many of his patients were under anesthesia or were either waking up after operations, and conclusively he has been charged with 111 counts of rape, 189 counts of sexual assault.
So today, we sentenced a man who raped 300 people and who is serving the same sentence as if he had raped just one person. So there are really things that need to change, and this serial aspect really needs to be taken into account, and at least 10 years added, or even more. So ultimately for me today, I feel like it was for nothing. That's quite disappointing.
As his trial comes to an end, many of his victims, now adults, and their parents lined up to protest outside the court in a sordid show of solidarity.
We are in our 40s today, and in fact, we no longer believe in justice. And today, my daughter, who is 16 years old, she no longer believes in justice either. We really have the impression that, well, that it was nothing, and that the number, in fact, meant nothing.
Mafias in Italy are joining hands. Instead of turf wars and fights on the streets, rival mafia bosses are cooperating with each other for the crime.
The infamous Cosa Nostra in Sicily, the Comorra around Naples, and Calabria's deadly 'Ndrangheta are now joining forces. With renewed and combined force, they're digging deep into drug trafficking, prostitution rings, and international money laundering.
Behind closed doors, they are also infiltrating public works, hiding in plain sight within construction contracts. According to Italy's national anti-mafia agency called the DIA, these groups are now structured to absorb tensions and operate together like a corporate machine. Over 200 public works sites were investigated in 2024 alone.
The proposed bridge over the Strait of Messina connecting Sicily to the mainland is their most ambitious target, to carry out money laundering using shell companies and funnel illicit cash into a clean-seeming business.
But the DIA says it's ready to fight back all anti-mafia prevention activities for the bridge, and they are being activated. Italy's mafia is no longer in the shadows. It's reinventing itself, hiding under the cloak of bureaucracy and white-collar businesses.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Haim and I will be back with you on the other side. In a bid to boost tourism, the Philippine government has launched new visa-free policies for short travel. The Philippines has introduced 2 category visas for Indians. We'll bring you the full report.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in. India's unprecedented diplomatic outreach to the world. Multi-party delegations expose, isolate, counter Pakistan's terror machinery as a threat to peace-loving, development-oriented humanity.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with him. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Trump administration will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields.
A U.S. federal court blocks most of President Donald Trump's sweeping import tariffs from going into effect, rules that the president had overstepped his authority with the across-the-board global levies.
U.S. futures surged after court blocked Trump's tariffs and Nvidia posted strong earnings. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures jumped, reversing losses from the previous session.
The White House officials reportedly confirm that Elon Musk is leaving the Trump administration and his off-boarding will begin soon. The tech billionaire led efforts to slash federal spending.
Thousands of Palestinians break into a United Nations warehouse in Gaza in an attempt to find food. World Food Programme says at least 2 people have died.
Ukraine says it is ready for more direct talks with Russia but wants Moscow to provide its peace terms to Ukraine in advance. And this as Moscow has proposed direct talks in Istanbul next Monday.
Massive glacier collapses in the Swiss Alps, largely destroying the village of Blatten. Authorities say 1 person missing.
Operation Shield, a civil defense exercise planned for today in states and union territories adjoining India's western border, has been postponed.
Bangladesh government deploys paramilitary forces as at least half a dozen demonstrators held in Dhaka, including political rallies, counter-protests and worker strikes.
আমরা চাই অতি দ্রুত
Indian tourists planning to visit the Philippines will find travel simpler and more accessible than ever before now.
The Philippine government has launched new visa-free policy for short travel.
Well, the Philippines is noted for its stunning beaches and is home to some of the most picturesque coastal escapes in Asia, from the world-famous powdery white sands of Boracay to the dramatic limestone cliffs of Palawan. The Philippines offers beach destinations for every type of traveler.
In a bid to boost tourism, Philippines has introduced 2-category visa travel for Indians, allowing stays of either 14 or 30 days without a visa, depending on eligibility criteria. Alongside an existing e-visa system, Category 1 14-day visa-free entry for Indian citizens. Even though a visa is no longer needed for 14-day stays, Indian travelers must meet a few basic conditions: a valid Indian passport with at least 6 months validity remaining, proof of confirmed accommodation in the Philippines, a return or onward travel ticket, evidence of sufficient financial means, no history of immigration violations in the Philippines.
Category 2 is a 30-day visa-free stay for certain Indian residents. Indian citizens with a valid visa or permanent residency in countries like the US, UK, Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore or any Schengen area country are eligible for an extended 30-day visa-free stay. Applicants must have valid documentation from one of the countries listed above, a clean immigration record with no prior violations, confirmed return or onward tickets is what is needed.
These updates mark a major shift in how the Philippines welcomes Indian travelers, with visa-free options, simplified processes and new visa categories on the way. And Bangladesh is on the boil again. The interim government led by Mohammad Yunus on Wednesday deployed paramilitary forces, including the Border Guard Bangladesh, that's the BGB, and the Special Weapons and Tactics SWAT.
As at least half a dozen demonstrations were held in Dhaka. It ranged from political rallies and counter-protests to worker strikes. There were also celebrations as senior Jamaat-e-Islami leader ATM, that is Azharul Islam, walked out free after Bangladesh's Supreme Court acquitted him, overturning his death sentence by the International Criminal Tribunal in war crimes related to the 1971 Liberation War against Pakistan. Yunus' interim government law advisor Asif Nazrul welcomed the acquittal, calling it an outcome of last year's the major protests that ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League on the 5th of August 2024. Leftist parties have said they will demonstrate in opposition to his release.
Meanwhile, thousands choked the streets as part of a rally called by the Bangladesh National Party, that's the BNP. A BNP delegation met Yunus on the 24th of May and pressed its demand for elections in December. During the rally, the supporters of the party called for the government to set an election date, as well as a raft of other demands, including the sacking of multiple members of Yunus's cabinet.
In other protests, civil servants demonstrated at the main government ministry complex to protest against an order changing employment rules. An ordinance issued by the interim government on Sunday paved way for the Ministry of Public Administration to dismiss public servants for misconduct without lengthy procedures, raising fears of arbitrary dismissals and sparking outrage across the bureaucracy. The government has said that it will reconsider it.
Till a couple of days ago, the tax authority workers were also demonstrating anger at an overhaul of the body that would place it under the finance ministry's control. That escalated on Sunday when security forces surrounded the national tax headquarters before the government later backtracked for the reform.
In Nepal, the student wing of the main opposition party CMP, Maoist, staged a protest.
Demonstrators called for the resignation of the Home Minister over accusations of his involvement in the visa scam.
Protest comes in the wake of revelations that immigration officials had been collecting bribes and facilitating illegal foreign departures using visit visas, allegedly as part of an organized racket. Amid growing suspicion of the Home Minister's link to the scam, the opposition has united in demanding Lekhak's Lekhak's resignation. They have vowed to block the proceedings and prevent government and ruling party leaders from speaking until the minister steps down.
The controversy began after the Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority raided the immigration office of the International Airport on the 22nd of May. Authorities acted on complaints of large-scale fraud in visit visa processing. CIAA officers detained Immigration Chief and Joint Secretary and confiscated critical documents. Reports say that the operation reportedly involved immigration officials and individuals linked to the Home Minister's private secretariat.
However, the ruling Nepali Congress Party has said that the Home Minister was not directly involved and therefore need not resign. No formal charges have been filed against the minister in question yet.
Our correspondent Saloni Murarka has sent us this report from the protest in Kathmandu. Take a look.
Student wing of the main opposition party, CPI and Maoist, have staged a protest demanding resignation of the Home Minister over his alleged involvement in the visit visa scam. They burned the effigies of the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. They want all those people involved in this scam to be punished and have called for a thorough investigation into this matter. Saloni Murarka for WION World is One in Kathmandu, Nepal.
On the 28th of May 1998, Pakistan conducted 5 underground nuclear tests in the Rasko mountains of the Chagai district, Balochistan.
These tests aimed at showcasing the nation's nuclear capabilities, had profound and lasting impact on the local population as well as the environment.
The immediate aftermath saw the once fertile lands rendered barren. Radiation contaminated the soil and water sources, leading to a surge in health issues among residents in that region. Reports indicate a significant increase in cancer cases, birth defects and other radiation-induced illnesses in the region.
Despite the passage of time, the repercussions persist. Environmental degradation continues to affect agriculture and livelihoods.
The lack of transparency and accountability has fueled resentment and unrest among the Baloch people. Protests and clashes have become commonplace, highlighting the ongoing struggle for recognition and justice. The decision to conduct nuclear tests in Balochistan without adequate safety measures or consideration for the local populace underscores a broader pattern of marginalization. The region's resources have been exploited and its people have borne the brunt of policies made without their consent.
Now, the European Union is under pressure as the Trump administration threatens to impose a 50% tariff on EU imports by the 9th of July.
The proposed duties, 5 times higher than typical levels, could amount to an effective trade embargo. The threat follows a familiar Trump tactic: escalate pressure with extreme tariffs, then negotiate lower terms. At the core of this is the US goods trade deficit with Europe, which stood at $178 billion last year.
But the EU countries that when services like online advertising and cloud computing are included, the overall trade gap narrows to just $48 billion, roughly 3% of total trade. This makes it more balanced than it appears.
Europe is exploring ways to appease the US, and this includes buying more American liquefied natural gas. The EU plans to phase out Russian gas imports by 2027, opening space for US suppliers. But analysts warn this won't deliver quick results. Maros Sefcovic, European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, touched upon potential areas of collaboration beyond eliminating tariffs.
They're also discussing, especially with Secretary Latnik, how can we address the areas where I believe that we will be much better off if we would work together. I'm talking I'm talking about our cooperation in the field of aviation, in the field of semiconductors, in the field of steel, in the field of different dependencies as well.
Defense is another potential lever here, and European nations are under pressure to boost military spending post-Ukraine, which could translate into more contracts for US arms firms, but domestic politics may resist that unless American companies build in Europe. A symbolic cut to the EU's 10% car import tax is possible, though unlikely to shift trade flows.
On agriculture, the EU is standing firm. It refuses to change long-standing bans on hormone-treated beef and chlorinated chicken, viewing food safety rules as non-negotiable. The cost of failure could be steep. Analysts at Oxford Economics estimate that 50% tariffs would shrink the Eurozone economy by up to 1% in 2026 and reduce business investment by more than 6%. The EU has proposed a 0-for-0 tariff deal on industrial goods, including autos, but Trump has dismissed it. The value-added tax, another US grievance, is widely used across 170 countries and considered trade neutral by economists. Europe has ruled out any change.
Now, experts say Trump's negotiating style, marked by threats and unpredictability, is fueling uncertainty for businesses. Whether a limited deal emerges or talks collapse, the episode underscores broader concerns about the reliability of US trade policy under Trump. And with tariff anxieties on the rise, more Americans are turning to second-hand marketplaces for value.
Platforms like OfferUp and eBay are witnessing a surge in activity as consumers brace for price hikes on imported goods. OfferUp, which has over 40 million users, reported a sharp increase in searches of smartphones, electric bikes, appliances and baby products, items particularly exposed to trade-related disruptions. According to executives, searches for some categories, including iPhones and washer-dryers, rose by as much as 10 times the usual level in May alone.
The US second-hand market generated roughly $53 billion in revenue in 2023. Capital One data shows that around one-third of all clothing bought in the US last year was second-hand. Platforms like ThreadUp report that a majority of shoppers are concerned trade policies will drive up apparel prices higher and prompting a shift towards resale. More than 40% of goods sold on eBay are now used or refurbished, a shift company executives call a major competitive advantage as well.
Retail analysts say this trend is just beginning with back to school and the holiday season ahead. Second-hand shopping is poised to surge further. Shoppers are not only looking to save but also to avoid potential shortages. Baby products, which are heavily imported from China, have seen particularly high demand on resale platforms. Industry watchers say that as tariff threats grow, so will consumer interest in pre-owned goods. This will mark a significant pivot in American shopping behavior.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen to this.
As U.S. tariffs escalate, Americans are turning to secondhand shopping to mitigate rising costs. Platforms like OfferUp have reported a tenfold surge in searches for items like Apple AirPods, couches, and even washing machines. Similarly, eBay notes that over 40% of its sales now involve used or refurbished items. A recent survey indicates that only 20% of consumers feel prepared for these price hikes, while 91% are already cutting back, cooking at home more, delaying tech upgrades, and seeking affordable alternatives. This shift isn't just about saving money, it's about adapting to a new economic reality where secondhand shopping becomes a practical and sustainable choice. The second-hand market is booming, projected to reach $73 billion by the year 2028. Platforms like Poshmark and Depop have seen significant increases as well in user engagement and shopping, reflecting a broader trend toward resale as consumers seek cost-effective alternatives amidst this economic uncertainty. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Chelsea carved their place in history. In Poland, the Blues roared back to beat Real Betis 4-1 in the UEFA Conference League final to become the first club to complete a clean sweep of European trophies.
Now, before the match even kicked off, chaos unfolded in the host city. Fan disorder erupted, leading to 28 arrests. Police were forced to deploy stun grenades and water cannons to restore order as both sets of supporters disrupted public peace. On the pitch, history was very much on the line. Real Betis chasing their first session but struggled to craft clear chances throughout the first half. Then came the second half and Cole Palmer took matters into his own hands. In a blistering 5-minute spell, Palmer said
he then produced a superb cross that Nicholas Jackson bundled into